What is up, my friends? We're going to do something a little bit different today. This is going to be a rig rundown of the rack that I use for Kim Byron Live Wires, Say Goodnight, Huge, AJB, and basically any band that I'm involved with, we run through this rack. And so there's a lot of decisions that have been made here that make our system easier to use for us and a little bit more reliable. Everybody's situation is different, so don't take any of this as the exact thing you need to buy. But if you want to know why we made the decisions we did, we're going to show you a little bit of that in the video to come. A lot of this will be sort of B-roll of the rack as I'm talking, and so you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about, and we'll go from there. All right, first up in the rack, we have a Sennheiser EW DX EM4 with Dante. We'll get into the Dante thing a little bit later, but first, why we use that. It's got 3 wireless microphones that we receive as well as my guitar signal. And we used to have a bunch of half-unit setups that had to have an antenna splitter attached to it as well, so that we could only run 2 antennas on stage. This combines all those half units and that splitter that used to take up 3 full rack units in the rack into 1 rack unit of space that has all that in one thing and some other benefits for us. And so this allowed us to shrink the rack down and also get a high quality signal. All right, below that in the rack, we have 2 EWG4 IEM setups and then an EWG3 setup and an antenna combiner. That provides power to all 3 IEMs. Everybody gets their own stereo IEM send, and we have an extra pack that we can use to share anybody's mix if we have a guest come play. So if we have a vocalist, a lot of time we'll throw that through Kim's mix. If we have a guitar player, we'll use my mix. It just depends on the situation, but that allows us to have 3 individual sends for ears and still get a 4th person on stage with us. Below that, we have a patch bay. That has PowerCon 3 antenna outputs, which allows us to split the antennas out of the rack, which really gets rid of some interference from being in all that metal. It allows us to put the antennas wherever we want on stage. We then have 2 input XLRs, 2 output XLRs, and a patch bay for 1/4-inch signals. This allows us to get Kim's guitar processor or an external microphone in. Sometimes we run a mono monitor signal from front of house if we have if we're playing with other bands and we still want to run our ears. It just varies by what we're trying to do, but it allows us to do it all from the front of the rack. All right, taking up 4 rack units on this thing on the next step down is the new Behringer Wing rack. This is the newest addition to our system. This is our digital mixer. It does all of our combination of our tracks that we send from the laptop. It does vocal processing, it does mix downs, it does our IEM sends, it actually sends to front of house depending on how we set it up each day. And that is like the brain of the rest of the rig. And finally, on the front of the rack, right below that Behringer Wing, we have a Midas DN48160. This is a Stage Connect box that provides 16 channels of output over XLR. This allows us to break out all of our stems from the mixer and send them to front of house so that a front of house engineer can run a mix for us. Sometimes we come with our own front of house and we just send a stereo out to front of house and say, put it at Unity, our guy will solve it. Other times we will not have our front of house engineer available, and so we need to split out from the mixer for front of house at the venue and let them mix from there. All right, sitting on top of that rack is a second rack that has my guitar processor. It's an Axe-Fx 3 Mark II Turbo. It is a beast. It's way more than I need, but it lets me do all the things I want to do, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. I also have another older Sennheiser EWD receiver there that I can pair my guitar transmitter to if I want to do a date with somebody else where I don't have the whole rig. I can take that and still be wireless. Let's talk about why we chose Dante and how that affects our overall signal chain. We run Dante out of the Sennheiser receiver over the Dante network into my laptop. That then runs through Wave Super Rack with, auto-tune, reverb, delay, whatever we want per song on it, and then back out over the Dante network to the Wing rack directly into a channel. In the past, we were running XLRs out of the Sennheiser into our X32 mixer, which then had to be, so that was a digital to analog conversion from the rack into the cables, and then an analog to digital conversion going back into the mixer. Then we ran that over USB to the laptop, did all the vocal processing, and then ran that back to the mixer to finally get it into ears and sends to front of house. That's a lot of conversions, and each one of those conversions adds some latency. The new Dante setup allows us to go directly between A, B, and C without ever converting to analog. The final analog conversion happens as we exit the mixer when we go to ears or front of house. In addition to running vocal effects, the laptop also runs all of our tracks. We run an Ableton Session for everything. We have Click, and like with Say Goodnight, we don't have a bassist, and actually with Kim Byer, we don't have a bassist. We have guitar, drums, and vocals. And so that allows us to really fill out the sound, make it feel like a full band, even when we don't have all the musicians on stage. That gives us click tracks and guides and other things. We can get into that in another video if people are interested, but all of that now runs over the Dante network as well. So instead of running USB for all the tracks, we run Dante into the wing rack and then mix from there. All right, now I want to talk about automation. This is something that I'm really proud of how much we've automated our setup, and it's something that a lot of bands aren't doing at the bar level, but we're really, really focused on being present in the moment and not worried about how our equipment is working. So Kim plays a guitar when we play live. We use a device called a WIDI Master to send that MIDI from her guitar wirelessly back to my computer, which gets processed in Ableton and then sent over Dante to the wing rack for mixing. There's a second WIDI Master attached to the back of my Axe-Fx. This provides two functions for us. One, we get preset changes at the beginning of each song to pull up the correct song in the Axe-Fx for me as we start the song. Additionally, throughout the song, we play scene changes through Ableton, which changes the sound of my guitar within the preset at the right point. So if I'm not playing, a lot of times I'll send a quiet patch, which lets my guitar turn off, and if I bump it, it doesn't make a big loud noise in the middle of it. Also, sometimes you go bigger distortion for a chorus and then quiet down for a verse. All that happens automatically for us. We even have gone so far as in songs that have a wah effect on them. Occasionally I've actually automated the wah, so I don't need to have a pedal on stage. The automation happens the same way every night, and I'm focused on playing the notes. And then secondly, the other piece of this is the controller. So if you look at this controller, we have next song, play, and stop on it. And these are buttons on the Axe-Fx controller that allow me to send MIDI back to Ableton from my floorboard. And so when we're ready to stop a song, we can hit the stop button. That's actually what we call our emergency stop. So if we get off of our click track and we're not going to be correct, we'll hit the emergency stop. In between songs, a lot of times we'll have a pad playing and just some quiet ambiance so that Kim or I can talk about whatever we need to talk about that night. But when we're ready for the next song, I can just press the next song button from my floorboard and we move seamlessly into the next song with a 4 count. Nobody's going to the laptop and smashing buttons and trying to figure out what to do. In addition to the Axe-Fx controller, we have a second little Bluetooth page turner. This is usually used for iPads for if you're using charts on stage. But we decided to use it slightly differently. This now also sends MIDI signals back to Ableton and can control AbleSet. So we have an emergency stop button and a next song button on there. So Kim can have her own controls outside of mine, and so when she's telling a story, I don't need to figure out where she wants to wrap up. She can sort of close the story and hit the next button, and we're off into the next song. All right, friends, that wraps up our rig rundown. I love nerding out over this stuff, so hit me up if you have questions, if you want to talk more, if you'd like to see more videos like this, do the subscribe thing, and we'll see you on the next one.